Hey guys, Nimbus here, and this message is brought to you by Ubit. Ubit is a cryptocurrency exchange made for everyone. Ubit supports Lucid Esports United, and they'll support you too. Sign up for Ubit today and get $10 in free Bitcoin to your account. It's free.
Man, that's so awesome to hear, and I really do want to hear about the journey. What was the first game you ever played? What got you into gaming in the first place?
Believe it or not, it was actually Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction specifically. That was the game that really, really got me going. One of my best friends his dad worked from home, so he had DSL, high-speed internet, and I had crappy dial-up, and that meant that he could do way more gaming than I did. And also, since his dad worked from home, his dad had all these extra computers that he didn't use for work anymore that weren't particularly good, but they were good enough for us to play Diablo on low settings. So I was always super jealous when I would come over and see them with these awesome characters and grind and do all this kind of stuff. So I bought Diablo 2 and I played it mostly offline as single player, kind of role playing in my head like I was playing online and, thinking about items as if I would trade them and that kind of stuff. And then finally, we got it kind of hooked up and I was able to play Diablo online. I played through dial-up a little bit, but, it was a totally different vibe. And back then, I wanted nothing more but to have internet in my bedroom. I had a computer that I got when I was 11 years old, Windows ME. So I think it was Christmas of 2000, the Millennium Christmas. And I was so excited, but my parents didn't trust me to have the internet alone in my room. We were only allowed to use the internet on the family computer that was in the kitchen. So it was highly visible to keep everyone accountable and stuff. So I spent a lot of time playing kind of solo offline, family computer was used. My dad was on the internet, so I had to just play single player Diablo upstairs by myself. Once I was able to I remember that first summer where I would just stay up all night basically because my family would be asleep and we would just play Diablo, and we had the phone and we would just put it on speakerphone. And since nobody was calling the house that late at night, we would just use it like Ventrilo or TeamSpeak or something and stay up all night chatting on the phone on these 6-hour local phone calls, playing Diablo together. So that was really my first foray.
I was going to say, I think I grew up around the same era. I remember doing similar things in Diablo and having internet problems and stuff like that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, we always wondered, I still, in the place I just moved from, you probably noticed this new apartment. Sorry, it's a little bit echoey. I'm still moving in furniture. I sort of have 2 living spots right now. And the one with roommates, that childhood friend moved with me to Colorado 5 years ago whenever we moved from New Jersey. And we've joked since then, I wonder how many emergency calls we were supposed to get. How many of our family members died and they tried to call and we're just sitting there playing Diablo, jamming up the line. That person on the other side, just what could they possibly be doing? The phone must be off the hook, pre-cell phone era. Hopefully that didn't actually happen, but sort of funny to think about in a really dark sort of way.
Absolutely. And how did you get into esports? Was it in college? Was that a path you chose going down education from Diablo, or what sparked the esports interest?
So not to be a total shill, but I did write a book about this, Surviving Esports, the Zyori story, self-published on the Amazon KDP. So I did cover some of this stuff in the book. It kind of goes through my journey and then really hyper focuses on the sniff event that you may or may not be aware of, and getting my first full-time job at Beyond the Summit. So in terms of esports, I got started in 2010, the junior year of my undergraduate degree in entrepreneurship. I had been playing StarCraft and a little bit of Heroes of New Earth, and somebody linked me to teamliquid.net just as hey, check out this thread. It has really good information. And I saw their little ticker, how many people were online, how active the forums were, all these different live streams. And I started watching them and my mind was kind of blown. It was the first time that I saw Ustream and Justin TV and these other platforms. And I was really blown away. At the time, I was sort of this lost soul, semi-depressed college student. I had a little bit of legal trouble starting college. And I was just in this sort of wayward, the fuck am I going to do with the rest of my life that's going to be happy and satisfying? And this seemed like the intersection of all the things I'd always been interested in. Loved video games. I had played soccer and other sports as a kid. I did competitive horseback riding. So I loved competition and the competitive side of video games. I was always interested in technology, like AV club kind of stuff, you know, video, audio, and how all that links together. Always loved playing around and tinkering with like the family video cameras and shit like that. And I was still pretty shy and introverted, but like that idea of being able to be like an entertainer or like talk about esports and have people like care about that and tune in, like, damn, that sounds like a dream job of dream jobs. Holy shit. So like seeing this cross section of the accessibility of streaming technology, like that big breakthrough in tech with video games being in the forefront of it, and then competitive games on top of that. Then you tie that in with, I was studying business, and like tying those three things together to make money is literally just a business, right? So it really was this like web of activities. It's like a 4-circle Venn diagram. And that sweet spot in the middle was kind of this aha moment of, this looks pretty fucking cool. So I signed up to play in like a really shitty tournament that was like free to enter. It was like only for platinum and lower players. And the winner would get a free coaching session with this grandmaster player. And it was really poorly run, and it got rescheduled all these times and all this kind of stuff. So I eventually got cold feet and said, why don't I just do my own tournament? This guy didn't even have a prize. Like, who is this guy? I don't even know if he's good or if his coaching's worth a damn. So I started refunneling a little bit of my money, and I did these like $50 per week StarCraft 2 open tournaments. And we do like a 120, 256 person bracket every Friday, and then do like the semifinals and the grand finals the next day on Saturday and make a little show out of it. And that was the very beginning, running micro StarCraft 2 tournaments with my college beer money, and not going out drinking on Friday and Saturday nights. That's really where it started, man.
That's amazing, man. That is such an amazing story. And I remember playing StarCraft and probably watching like some of the content maybe around some of those tournaments and not even knowing it. Just as like a casual player, you know.
You ever play in the Hyper Crew Open? There were like 20 of them, man.
I wish I did.
Known as Hyper Crew back then. The one claim to fame is in our first tournament, the kickoff event. You know, Destiny, Stephen Bonnell, he's like a political streamer now.
Yeah.
Very popular. Yeah, that the first time I broke 100 viewers on my live stream was because I started covering one of Destiny's games, and I had no idea who he was. It was totally random. And yeah, obviously there were a lot of people. He had like 150 viewers on his stream or something, and they had trickled over because they wanted to see the map hack version. They wanted to see my feed where they could see what the enemy was doing, so they could gauge it against, you know, Destiny's reactions and stuff. Yeah, pretty cool. Small world, man. Small world. I've met him multiple times, though. I wouldn't be surprised if he wouldn't remember me if I came up to him in person.
What a wild story. And like, yeah, small world. Like, it's funny how we all have like played similar games and like had like a little bit of a similar path. Like the same games kind of pop up throughout history and like childhood, you know, people growing up and stuff like that. How did you find like cryptocurrency? What led you down like the path of cryptocurrency and blockchain?
Yeah, well, you might have heard through that little anecdote there that I've always been interested in technology, right? The AV side, I've been, for my age, like an early adopter with internet. You know, I was using the computer really young. And one of my biggest regrets as a kid, I'm a strong communicator now because I spent a lot of time studying, learning, and practicing communication. I spend a lot of time talking. I really like it. I love the art form of verbal expression. But as a kid, I was really quiet and introverted, and I had a lot of thoughts, but was really bad at putting them into articulate words. Like all kids are bad at that, but I was like particularly bad at it. And I think my parents confused my interest in computers purely with an interest in gaming and just like wasting time, so to speak, and kind of blowing off responsibilities to play games. And when you're a kid, it's really hard to communicate that, like, no, I want to make this shit. You know, like I remember thinking as a kid, I want to know how computers work. Like I remember being so excited to study computer science because I just wanted to understand, like, all right, I push the button, the thing turns on, some electricity shit happens, but like, how does it actually work? And then I got a job at a computer repair store when I was in middle school. So I learned kind of how hardware works and like what the pieces are and started building my own computers. But then the next question is like, okay, well, how does the software work? Like, when I click this program, it opens this thing and does this thing, like who makes that? I wish I could have expressed that to my parents as a kid. When I would have loved going to computer science summer camp. I would have been all about that shit. I think I definitely would have loved if I had gotten into it young enough. I wanted to be a computer programmer for so much of my life, but I was like weirdly too embarrassed to tell anybody. And I don't know why that was an embarrassing thought, but it just felt like it was too, it's like saying you want to be an astronaut or something. You know, back then I had this really glorified image of what it meant to be a software developer. I am a good fit for business. I did 1 year. I have a minor in computer science. So I basically did 1 year of CS and then switched to business. So I understand it to a really small degree, but the skills, don't really keep up if you don't keep up with it. I've totally lost my train of thought though. What was the question again? Crypto. Right. So I got into crypto like very early actually, but didn't buy. Like 2013, 2014, one of my current friends, one of the co-founders of my scholarship that's branded around my Mystic Soraya, I've been friends with him since high school. We played World of Warcraft together. He was a gladiator WoW player. He was always better than me at video games, and he's way better than me at crypto. And he got in like, pretty early. And he was doing stock trading, then got into crypto trading. And I sort of followed him along in some of that. I was never really into day trading, but I've always been interested in stocks and financial stuff. I've always kind of been interested in governance. And like I took AP government in high school. Of my 2 AP classes were government and statistics. So that's like sort of speaks to, I guess, what my brain goes to. If I can take advanced material in anything, those were the 2 that I thought might be most interesting. Not necessarily most relevant, but closest to what I was interested in learning. So the governance element of cryptocurrency and blockchain, I think, is very interesting to me, almost more so than like the price speculation. The price speculation has always sort of felt secondary. So I've been watching it for a long time. I did a really crappy crypto show with him in like 2014, maybe, when Bitcoin was just like breaking the early thousands. And it was mostly a price speculation show. I'm sure the VODs are still on my YouTube. They're probably embarrassing as hell with me not knowing anything, just blathering on about random price points while Hyper talked indefinitely about hyper technical stuff that no one really understood or cared about. So I had some very small holdings. I was mostly involved in Litecoin. I've owned a couple of L3 Litecoin miners. I've flipped one, and I have one now that's very profitable that I bought for $100. So it's in the process of being flipped. It's plugged in. I still run a Litecoin miner. I'm supporting the Doge network, unfortunately.
Your life sounds like a mirror of mine. Like I have some Antminer L3 pluses that I just sold the last one off like a couple months ago during the Doge pump.
Get out of here, dude.
Yeah, I swear to God,
way.
this is like hilarious to me. Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's
funny.
Fantastic.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, Litecoin is this weird, I don't really believe in it anymore because I don't think it really does that much, but it does seem like having a cheap, reliable testnet for Bitcoin is kind of weirdly valuable. I don't know what the long-term prospect on Script is, but I think there is something to like making it easier and more accessible and running on a normal outlet instead of like a giant voltage outlet makes it a little more, it's kind of like the Vertcoin energy. It's like we want it to be decentralized so the normal person can still have access to it. And I haven't started writing it, but I have a very pixelated idea to write a blog called The Amazing Journey of the L3 Miner, because that shit has been profitable for like more than half a decade, and it shouldn't be. It makes absolutely no sense in every other aspect of crypto mining.
I just went to unplug mine in January, and then the whole Doge pump thing happened, and it went to like making crazy profit again. And then I looked on eBay, and people were willing to pay the full MSRP price I paid to Bitmain in like 2017 to get the machine or whatever it was. And so I sold it on eBay for full price. And I was like, this isn't going to go well, because as soon as the guy got it, the price had already like started to pull back. So he like put in an eBay request that it was broke when he got it. But the photos showed it was like packaged well. So eBay, like they didn't charge me or anything. But
no, I do feel bad about that. The one that I flipped, it's like, I didn't like rip the guy off, but I definitely played the market and sold it at its peak, and its peak started to take a little dump ski shortly after he bought it. I'm sure if he's been running it this whole time, he's probably not at break even yet.
I mean, I myself as a seller was in shock. I was like, people are I need to sell mine then. Like, if this is what they're going for on the market, like, I need to sell mine right now, you know?
Yeah, it is an interesting ethical question, right? Like, getting a good deal in like a system like that's sort of zero sum, like that. It's not a victimless crime, right? Somebody gets got on one side of that deal.
It's a transaction.
If it's free market and they're willing to do it, and you disclose everything, and they just misread the market. I mean, that's happened to me many times, right? I'm not 500% plus on every coin holding that I have. I'm red on some of them. I've had some go to zero. I've had some freaking stocks go to zero, dude. I was in on some pot stocks, and one of the ones I bought into literally went to zero because they got caught doing all this gray area shady stuff. They lost their license to do business. And that was it. It's just over. What do you do? They tried, they limped along, and after a year they bled out and we're like, we're fucking done. Zero. That is $1,000 just gone. So it's not even unique to crypto. I've definitely taken some losses. Even the first investment I ever made, it was in this random ass business. It was like I didn't realize this was a platitude. And I'm almost so embarrassed at how green I was. He was like, listen, man, I'm working on this game. It's like chess and Magic the Gathering combined. And get this, okay? It's really easy to understand, but it's impossible to master. And I was like, whoa, oh my God, that sounds like the perfect framework for a game. Bro, okay, what do you need to make it? So my investment in the company was $2,500 for, I forget what percentage. It was a decent, maybe it was 25%, so it was like a $10,000 valuation. But I bought him a 3D printer. It was a MakerBot. Which they turned out to be pieces of shit and kind of a scam as well. So I got like double scam. So I drove to Manhattan in my little Honda Accord with Hyper and my current roommate, actually. And we went to the MakerBot store where they only sold MakerBots. It was this little tiny shoebox store in the ground floor of this giant Manhattan complex. And you walk in and there's just a bajillion MakerBots, and there's a bunch of them going, and there's all these kids and everything. I remember it was the first time I bought something where I checked out on a tablet. And I was like, whoa, this place is trendy as fuck. So I spent $2,500 plus taxes, $50 in tolls and gas, a whole day's worth of driving to Manhattan. I've shipped this thing up to Pennsylvania, wherever the hell the guy lives. And he starts making 3D models to make the Kickstarter, to fund the whole thing. And of course, the Kickstarter flopped. The Kickstarter, I think the target was 10K, and it raised less than the 2,500 I spent on the MakerBot. So
we've all done shots like that. You have to take the shots to learn, and like everything you've done in your past like leads up to all the knowledge you need for today. Like, it's funny how all the stuff that I've done in my past, like myself and Efficient talk about it all the time, like throwing concerts we used to do and all these other business adventures we've done throughout the years. It's when we found Axie, it just kind of like all clicked and we fell in love so quick, and we were like, this is home. This is home. Like, this makes sense, you know?
Yeah. So anyway, I did some weird crypto stuff, but I made a big mistake. I moved most of my holding, like after flipping all that stuff, I had all these Litecoins, they were going up and down, and I lost faith. I actually sold them in 2019, like right before that big bull market we had. And took a pretty big hit. Those Litecoins would have gone like 3 or 4x from what I sold them at from where they peaked during that bull run. So I did very much misread the market. I had held on to some Bitcoin and a little tiny bit of Ethereum throughout all that. But what had jaded me was the ICO era. I love that statement that Vitalik made a while ago about how like the ICO era was this really crazy time that definitely had potential to break cryptocurrency, and it kind of like almost did. I worked on a project in 2018, I think, with my roommate from New Jersey and a Dota commentator named Jenkins, who had just graduated. He's going to TI now. He's actually done very well for himself in Dota, but at the time he was like an up and comer. He was struggling to be a pro player, and he had just finished his degree from Waterloo, actually, same school that Vitalik went to, at least for a little while, and was super interested in trying to do blockchain stuff. So we built this little Prisoner's Dilemma app that was pretty cool, but it was sort of like, is this really anything? Who gives a shit? And we moved the idea into this like really expanded version of it that started getting really complicated. And then we started seeing the writing on the wall with like variable gas fees as making this whole thing complicated. We sort of built this without gas in mind. And now like, wagering $5 and paying $5 per transaction doesn't really make sense anymore, this sort of thing. So then we started modeling out a game. It was rocks. It was called Crypto Geodes. It was like you have this miner and there's 4 different types of rocks, and you use the miner to mine for rocks, but then the rocks get consumed to power the miner. So like the coal controls how long it mines for, and the diamond bit, the more pure the diamond, the deeper it can mine, and the deeper it mines, the more chances to find like diamonds and other rare shit. And like fluorite increases your like magic find, your chance to get other shit. And I forget what the quartz did something. Maybe quartz was a time multiplier, so your thing could go like mine more efficiently or something. I forget.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was an okay idea, and then we had like a little battle system, right? We're gonna battle rocks, battle geodes, right? You mash your geodes against each other. It was very much like Axie battles, turn-based, like sort of a similar thing. So we had this really cool idea. We thought we're super original. We're like, rocks are awesome, miners. It's like miners and crypto. People are gonna love it. And it like what we didn't realize that was so revolutionary is like the deflationary economy. This idea of having to have opportunity costs. Do I keep shit because it's rare and collectible, or do I put it in my thing and burn it, but have the chance to get more things and like play the expected value? And that's like a really cool part of crypto economies and games. And then we discovered Axie Infinity. And I swear to God, our developer, he had 2 smart contracts deployed on the testnet. And he was just telling us in the meeting like that day, I think we're going to need like 4, maybe 5. Like this is getting really complicated and I'm having trouble like figuring out how to piece it all together. And then in that meeting, I was like, well, check out this Axie thing. I wonder how they do it. And he was like, whoa, this looks really sophisticated. These people are way ahead of us. And he looked at their back end and went, they have 35 smart contracts? Fuck. I don't know if I can do this, guys. And literally was like, I'm out. Like I am way in over my depth. This shit is painstakingly slow to build and figure out. Good luck to you. And then my roommate and I were like, well, we can't build it without him. And we just fucked off. Like Axie seriously demoralized us because of how like a beautifully established it was for that early on. And we were just like, damn, we might have a really cool idea here. And on paper, this could be like a $1 bajillion idea. But if you can't make it, it's worth nothing, and you have to think about at the time, the risk of it working versus the opportunity cost of what you could build in Dota where you're already established. We went back to Dota, and it was because I learned a lot of important esports skills that I'm now going to bring to Axie. But it is pretty funny to think about like being in crypto and then failing at a project and then seeing all these ICOs. And I think every ICO I invested in went bust. So I was just kind of like, what is this? Is this just all for scams? Does this actually have a value proposition? And then in January of this year, I started expanding my podcast content and reconnected with that guy, Kevin, or Everdread, my co-host of the New Blocks. And he was the one that really shook me into reality and was just like, dude, DeFi is not a scam. This isn't like ICOs. Open up your fucking brain. Open up that mind. You don't know what you're going to find. And that was the beginning of being reawoken into the world of crypto and seeing how far the foundation had come. And then Psych Out reached out to me in March or something of this year after the Sky Mavis announcement, just saying, hey, man, we're hiring. You know anybody? I said, actually, I do. You're talking to him. Alex had actually played in one of the betas, I think for our Prisoner's Dilemma thing way back when. And that was how I had originally gotten in touch with him and followed him on Twitter and stuff. And right after they launched the auto battles for Axie, they actually sent me a set of Axies that were pretty legit for back in the day. I have a 2018 set of Axies. They're not Mios or anything special, but I still got them. That original account, the power of blockchain, dude. Those Axies were just sitting there lurking, waiting for me. I never logged in and used them. I still feel a little guilty about that. I made so much money, dude. Alex was trying to hand me the hand up, and my cocky ass, you want to know this? I don't know if I ever even told Alex this, but you want a real leak here, a real insider piece. The thing that gave me the most cold feet, I remember having Explore Axie Infinity on my to-do list for 2 or 3 months. And every day it just felt like low priority and not essential and not time sensitive. So it just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed until I was like, all right, I'm never going to do this shit. The thing that made me go that's a red flag was when he said, we're going to have esports with this one day. And I remember thinking, yeah, right. This little crypto mobile game's going to be an esport. Get the fuck out of here, dude. Come on. You're talking to you're talking to the CEO of an esports broadcasting and event organization company. Okay. Don't insult me with this fucking mobile esport blockchain bullshit. Okay. Esports are played on a console or a computer with a controller or a keyboard. That's not for phones. All right. This isn't kiddie time. Esports is serious. God, I feel like such a douchebag thinking about how cocky I was.
Oh my
It's
God.
awful. But that was really how I thought. That was the perspective back then. And it's like I knew mobile gaming would start to take over, but just hearing him say that then, I thought that was so lofty and egotistical. And the irony of me thinking that that's egotistical.
If you would have rewound and got my same comment back then in history, it probably would have been very similar. You know what I mean? It's crazy how far it's grown. Like, so they reached out to you. How did like Axie Esports blossom? Did you come to them like, hey, we need to get this esports side rocking, or?
No. I mean, we're on like season 18 of Arena, so they've done a lot of heavy lifting on esports before I got involved. I think that was the part that sold me. Now that like they've approached me and they've got this like we've got this hardcore player base. Was investigating when I signed on, we had like 40,000 daily active users, so not crazy, but that's like a pretty good foundation. Like that could be a budding esports scene. And the more the content I watched and the more that I engaged with the creators and did that exploration, the more I started seeing these parallels to like the early StarCraft 2 days. You want to hear something funny, right? I have a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship. So that's like a small business or like business administration degree, except you swap out the admin courses for a bunch of creative innovation courses, right? I wrote multiple business plans, or wanted to, not full plans, but pitched the idea of business plans that had to do with esports and video games. And I was told point blank, change your mind, change your idea, because we're not doing video game shit here. If you're talking about making video games, okay, yeah, that could be profitable. But this whole like competitive video games, no one's going to watch other people play video games. Certainly no one's going to pay to watch other people play video games. So the irony of that, right? Being in an innovation program, being early to this brand new industry that's going to change broadcast media forever, and the boomer professors saying, nah, sport, do something more traditional. So yeah, I took that as a challenge more so than anything else. So I guess I should thank them, because it certainly did motivate me. But in those early days, and to their credit, like I didn't have any data. Like I was really early in 2010, unless you went to an MLG or a DreamHack, you really couldn't get it. There was like this palpable energy that was there, this intangible feeling where I'm running these tournaments where it's like, okay, I'm putting up some of those early tournaments. It was $25 was the prize, like $20 for first place, $5 for second place. We would get 128 people that would show up to play in the bracket. And that, it wasn't great content, but it was still unique content that I could practice my commentary skills. And I always wanted to do more business stuff and kind of graduate forward. But you need like a core competency to stay relevant in the space. So I saw casting as my foot in the door, so to speak. So yeah, seeing those parallels made me feel like that there was this organic nature to Axie. Like I've been offered a few other sort of similar positions with other games, or at least sort of kind of like tentatively explored, where they like, hey, this is going to be an awesome game. We want you to make our esports for us. And it's like, well, I can't make people interested in your game as an esport. That's not really what I do. I take games that have an organic interest in esports and amplify that esports space and add a voice and add content to it. And I can help you with the messaging and help you with the construction, and try to touch as many people as possible with an esports scene. But there's got to be this organic foundation that exists on the most basic layer, where people are interested in it, excited about it, and the game is like balanced and created in such a way that it fosters esports, And I think Axie checks most of those boxes. And then when you factor in the structure of play to earn and the treasury and this massive amount of money that we have locked in AXS tokens that are going to be used for tournament prize pools and like league distribution. And then you couple that with the financial tools of being able to actually cheaply send money to people globally that aren't professional players. That actually opens up some potential to do some revolutionary stuff. I mean, Heroes of Newerth was trying to do this. The Hantor, I think, was their rumored giant tournament that was basically bust and ultra delayed. And their slogan was esports for everyone. This idea that it's not just the upper elite 0.01% of players that should touch esports. They couldn't really figure out how to do it, but I think Ronin actually does give us the tools to do that. Being able to send $10 to somebody globally basically for free, that's a really big deal. When we're talking about, let's say we want 10% of participants to get prizing from playing in esports. I don't think that's ever happened before, at least not to my knowledge.
No, absolutely. It's huge. And I mean, it's amazing to us, like being able to just send funds to people anywhere in the world for free on Ronin is massive.
Yeah.
And then,
it's not going to be free forever, but it's substantially cheaper than like a PayPal fee or a wire fee or something like that. We're talking cents instead of dollars.
right.
And also don't forget, like the cool thing about Axie Esports is we don't need sponsors, not only because of how much AXS is worth, but because AXS is also a governance token, right? So part of our strategy is trying to get this token in the hands of people that actually care about it and want to use it and think about governance, right? This has been something that a lot of cryptocurrencies and blockchain projects have struggled with. How do we, like airdrops, airdrops end up going to people that are looking to make a quick buck. It doesn't really get people to care about the project. How do you distribute governance tokens in a way that makes governance meaningful rather than it being held by just a handful of whales that we're able to buy in? So that's also a big part of our esports program, right? Like the backbone of the whole thing. It's not just about money. When you look at Dota 2, like the international has kind of just turned into being about money, and every year breaking that record of how much money is raised. Valve keeps 75% of all the money that's raised for the international. That 40 million is only 25% of all the money that was crowdfunded by the audience. So it's just a totally different model where we're working on something that's much bigger picture and higher order than just, hey, look at this giant amount of money that we're giving away to 50 players. I don't think that's really a sustainable model long term.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And with the explosion of growth we've seen this summer and a little bit of server congestion, do you think that's held back the esports growth a little bit this year?
10,000%, dude. The growth spurt is it's a blessing and a curse, right? It has put us on the map, and it's really proven the concept of what Axie scholarships and Axie scaling can be, and points to Axie being a whole universe, right? Not just the game that you see now, but this whole amalgam of different ways to use your Axie. The long-term scaling solution is with the SDK and the map editor. I want to see an Axie game in every genre, and Sky Mavis is definitely not going to make all of those, right? That's a pretty wild thing to think about. We're going to scale this thing by opening up the map editor to let the community start making games and building with their Axies. But there is such a thing called a smart up strategy, right? A lot of tech startups do this. You build an MVP, minimum viable product version of your game or your project. You start to scale it with some small users to get proof of concept. A lot of things are going to change based on their feedback. And then you move into sort of a consumer facing level of production. And then you scale strategically up from there in terms of building out new parts of your product, using feedback to build up your existing products. And eventually that if it all works, you're going to have to refactor all that to scale for enterprise, right? Enterprise is a totally different level of code production than sort of your average program. Millions of users instead of tens of thousands of users, totally different scope. So we always knew we were going to have to refactor this code. And up until now, our growth has been not linear, but somewhat predictably on this upward trend. People say the word exponential a lot. They usually mean to say parabolic. Getting technical with math here, I know that's not very sexy, but exponential is truly it's a straight up line, man. Most things don't experience exponential growth. We did. And simply put, it broke our shit. You probably remember 2 months ago when the game servers just didn't work for 3 weeks, when it was super laggy and you often couldn't connect, and we had to turn off everything that wasn't mission critical. Everything showing how much MMR you get after each win, or how much SLP, and there's no replays or battle log. You can't challenge your friends. we don't want to turn these features off. It was simply like a matter of survival because our stuff just wasn't built to scale that size that quickly. So our dev team has been working overtime. That sprint was insane of dealing with the negativity and having to block it out and just focus on just code it up, guys. Just we know you're good. We know you can do it. It was a real team effort to push through that. Just because the servers are working now doesn't mean all that refactoring is done. And one of the key things is that challenge server. And that's the backbone of all the tournaments. That's what allows tournaments to happen, is being able to challenge your friends. And then you can play in like, exhibition matches and custom lobbies and all that kind of stuff. Once the scaling issues hit, I was told like, hey, yeah, we're going to have to turn off esports for 3 months or however long it takes us to scale this thing, maybe even longer. I was like, well, I just spent 2 months having calls with people, hyping up the awesome shit we're going to do with esports this year. So could we not rug my, like, I'm brand new, guys. This is not a good look for me to like hype all this up and then have 0 tournaments. So the compromise, of course, was, well, let's do this private server. And it has a finite capacity. It can only handle so many people. It's not really meant to scale, but it is a challenge server. And that's what's enabled our preseason of esports. And yeah, this is so far from the final form. We don't want esports to be this gate-kept, like access-only type thing. It's just by virtue of, if I open up the floodgates, this server will also go down. So this was the compromise of like rewarding some of the tournament organizers that were already starting to take risk on Axie, allow for some of these TOs that have reached out to us to run some experiments, and allows us to collect some data, kind of see what works, see what doesn't. But yeah, that bottleneck was not meant to be there. This was a reaction, sort of given the opportunity cost of no esports, this was the best that we could do. But once the challenge server is restored, which should be before the end of the year, I think we're ahead of schedule, so maybe even much sooner than that. Then third-party esports can just kind of run autonomously. We'll still sponsor some events here and there with AXS, and then that starts laying the foundation for us to take steps and build towards like, Axie Pro League type stuff, and start trying to figure out how to make like a proper circuit out of what we've got. So
I think you answered the question I was going to pull up from the chat. Do you see custom games coming to grassroots community tournaments anytime soon, similar to your StarCraft start? So in the next couple months.
Yeah, if that's what they mean by custom games, yes. The like SDK version of like allowing people to make their own custom games, that's still a ways off. But yeah, this idea of custom lobbies or whatever, how do I scrimmage against my friends? Yes, absolutely. That's like a feature that we never wanted to turn off, but you got to bear with us while we get this ship scaled. Like I said, it's going really well. The scaling is way ahead of schedule. Our devs are super slaying it. It's just really unsexy work that is like, not easy to brag about, and you don't see it, but it's having a big impact. You only feel the server load when we're close to peak. Or I'm sorry, not peak, when you're close to like what our limit is. So we've scaled the servers to like give us plenty of buffer in the short term, but we want to have like some long-term scaling stuff set up before, because we know there's another growth spurt coming, right? There's there's a lot in the roadmap, a lot in the pipeline, and we're due for some big deployments, right? You can feel it. The audience is eager. We're eager. It's been a while since we shipped something massive. That's not by design. That's just our roadmap getting thrown into chaos by having to do all this server rescaling when we were planning on having some of this stuff ready to be deployed.
That makes complete sense. And some people need to to sometimes take a step back and realize that there was a little bit of a shakeup this summer, but it was from the positivity of all the great growth in the game, and having to stop the development to solve that issue so that people can just continue to play and get introduced to the game kind of slows down the roadmap a little bit, but it doesn't change the fact of the history of that the game shipped in the past and is going, and you guys are working to ship in the future. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. I mean, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think some of the the recent FUD videos over the last couple of weeks, that's on a highest level. I think the most frustrating part is the presumed distrust, this sort of tone of are they even working on the stuff they say they're working on? And it's we're coming up on 4 years of history of shipping stuff. If you think we're just lying about what you think LAN gameplay is a myth or something, version 2 of battles is just some sort of fictional made up idea. I mean, I've played the internal alpha. It's very, very real. It's, if you don't believe us on that level, then I sort of don't know what to tell you. Like I do acknowledge that there is some trust that has to take place, especially while we're still in this alpha state. But if you're not willing to trust us at all on like that basic high level, the rest of it's just noise. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I agree 100%. And like speaking to the future where you were kind of going, like what are kind of your like near term, end of year, beginning of 2022 goals with the esports and Axie? Like where do you see like near term, what should people be looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, we have that preseason schedule out there, and it goes through December basically. We're working on some, our roadmap changes a lot, but we have some first-party Sky Mavis events that we're going to do. I think sort of early mid next year. 2022 is going to be the first year where things really kick off, and we have the bandwidth and the resources, to run like some actual proper Axie leagues. I don't think we're going to launch like a full-blown Axie Pro League in 2022, maybe at the end of it, depending on how our seasons are structured. If we do sort of like a winter split or something, we need to figure out how AxieCon's going to work, where it's going to happen, and when it's going to happen. But I think 2022 is like realistic for the first AxieCon. And esports are definitely going to be a part of that, right? Like AxieCon would have all sorts of different activities. It would be like a proper Axie Expo, but the Axie World Finals or some sort of like World Championship would absolutely be a part of it, right? Like trying to figure out who the best Axie player is in the world, at least until the next AxieCon, is absolutely a really hype piece of content. So esports is very much intertwined with the various other events that we want to do, and figuring out how to piece all that together is really important. I guess I can say in the 6 months or so 5 months that I've been part of the team, I've made multiple roadmaps that have sort of been completely scrapped for various reasons, be it changes in the broad roadmap, server scaling issues, sponsor interest, player interest. It seems like there are a number of major esports orgs, like traditional orgs, that have reached out and, inquired like, what's going on here? Are you guys going to do anything big that we should, should we be making an Axie team? And, I think they're still a little early, and they're going to wait until we have more like proper infrastructure announced. But there's a lot of big organizations lurking, and we're trying to figure out how to activate some of them in the short term to, build some faith and good faith and build up some audiences a little bit. So yeah, I think this year, the rest of this year is going to be a little quiet and chaotic. This preseason is not cohesive. There's no finals. There's no qualifier points. It's just a collection of individual events to see, anybody can make a proposal. Not everybody can follow through on the proposal. So that's part of the data collection that we're doing in this preseason. And that will inform some of our decision-making for 2022. But I would say look out for like a big, first party like Sky Mavis run Axie tournament sometime in like Q2 of 2022. I think that's a pretty reasonable timeline. We really got to get over this hump of being like pure alpha. And obviously, version 2 of Battles or Axie Origin is coming out soonish. So that will certainly have an effect and implications for the esports scene, right? Like it's a competitive game. It's a different style game, but it's competitive. It's Axie's battling. It's a different type of arena. So there's going to be some sort of involvement with that with esports. And again, need to see what happens and do some data collection. Very much an agile strategy around here.
That makes a lot of sense. Like things are changing daily. When you're on like the cutting edge of the cutting edge, you're on the cutting edge of blockchain technology and Ethereum alone. And then you add Ronin on there, and then you're on the cutting edge of just creating a game that's play to earn like this. And you have all the tokenomics and the game, like just the game mechanics and everything that has to get tied in. Like it's understandable when things take time and hurdles arrive. Like it's easy for anybody to copy something and like kind of catch up and play a little, like, not all the way, but like, put something out there. What's hard is the people that are working on the cutting edge, and like there needs to be an understanding from the community that we're not doing easy things. Like they take time and sometimes thought and communication.
We're writing the playbook as we go along. And I think I said this on my stream yesterday, but one of the things about blockchain is that there isn't really a strong incentive to do the PR cycle the same way traditional games do, right? Because in the real world, I shouldn't say real world anymore. In the traditional centralized world, you can sue people that rip off your IP pretty easily, right? Like you can't just steal Blizzard's assets because they have a big legal team. And to steal those assets, like people know who you are. In the crypto world, there's a lot of like anon projects out there that can very easily just copy and paste the like high level sort of topical parts of what we do. You know, you can kind of copy and paste our art, you can kind of copy and paste our tokenomics, but you can't copy paste the community and the time spent building that community. That's the real core, like the core hard part. But now that we're like far and large number one in the NFT gaming space, everybody's looking to us as both as leaders and both to kind of like rip us off. And some of the ripoffs are pretty egregious, and we do make an effort to file takedowns and make it difficult for them to just steal our stuff and get away with it. But a lot of it is pretty unethical, and there's like a high risk of rug pull and like users legitimately just losing their money. I mean, these things are just straight up like calling them scams, I guess, is kind of gray area, but they're not built in good faith, you know. We've all seen it with like the fake co-founders and the copy pasted like LinkedIn profiles and stuff. It's pretty scary. So we don't really have a strong incentive to like leak what we're working on. The best way to like mitigate the fallout from that dynamic of this system is to wait until stuff is done, drop it without any real heads up, and then surprise the world with, hey, look, we built this thing, look how cool it is. That gives them the least amount of time to reverse engineer our stuff. There's a balance there. Obviously, we can do better with communication, and we're overdue to ship something really big. And like I said before, you can really sense that the audience is hungry for some new information. But I think that's just
a really good point. I think that's a really good point that not even I thought, like I hadn't thought about that. Like people are copycatting, and like there is a reason to just kind of hold back until something's finished. And I think a lot of people have that mindset of the traditional world. Like they want the Apple quarterly update of what the iPhone's working on and what's going to come out in the future, and they're not used to like the fact, like that was like a eye-opening comment you just had there, even to myself, like, oh, I never really thought about that. Like you do need to almost withhold more information.
It's not all bad too. Because it's part of this dynamic of this is part of what allows crypto to innovate so quickly, right? We don't have black boxes. Basically, everything is out there and open source and transparent for the most part. So when you can see stuff and just copy paste code, we don't have to reinvent the wheel constantly. Everybody can just go, hey, awesome exchange. Boop, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to tweak these things. Now it's totally different. There's like a dark side and a positive side to that. And the positive side for us, like Ronin is basically a clone of Ethereum and MetaMask mashed into one app that works specifically for our blockchain. In some ways, like that is the highest form of flattery of like, we're very bullish on Ethereum. Yes, we have a side chain and we're driving more stuff onto our side chain, but the Ethereum bridge is still one of the biggest gas burners. It's like a top 5 or something. And we're always going to be closely linked to the Ethereum ecosystem. And we wanted to copy paste Ethereum and follow all that syntax so that we could always very easily talk to Ethereum. And I think that is our bullishness on Ethereum alongside Ronin is part of the faith that a lot of our community has in the Ronin network, feeling like, yeah, sure, I can always cash out and get my stuff off Ronin and back to Ethereum whenever I want to. The gas fees might be expensive, but I have that freedom at any point. That's like a really big deal, right? So there is like a really positive side to things being open and just easily, yeah, sure, make your own version of it. But the dark side when it comes to games and that kind of IP, it's like a slightly different animal. And you can't prevent it, but we can definitely try to take steps to like, mitigate it a little bit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Nimbus had a good question in the chat. He said, will V2 replace the current Axies, or will we have a separate system?
No, so definitely think of the Axies. Think of it like a pyramid or like an onion or something. The Axies are on like I guess Ethereum's on the lowest foundation, but then the Axies are like right there on top of it. Think of your Axies as like this system of like, there's only going to be the amount of mystics we have now, the amount of origins. I guess a few more can be rolled with AOC tokens, but like the Christmas parts, the Japanese parts, like All those things are a finite resource. Those Axies, like we will have the future, release your Axie into the wild. Maybe that gives you a resource to refactor a skill on an existing Axie that you have or something. A lot of people suggest that as a way to burn SLP. That could totally happen, but that's not the only way to like increase the demand for Axies or also reduce the supply. Building out other games and other things you can do with your existing Axies is a big part of expanding their utility, expanding the use cases, and allowing Axie to scale into like, the billions of users. Right now, it feels like, Axie's all about this battle system. If you're not breeding or battling or collecting, there's nothing to do. And that goes back to our universe is like 8% done. But once we have land gameplay, like version 2 of battles and land, it's all the same Axies. Your Axies are at the base point. They're just NFTs that can be used in these different sandboxes. Version 2 of battles is just going to be another sandbox. So you'll be able to battle in version 1 or version 2. You can use your Axies in a variety of ways. And this is just the first step of many in giving your Axies more things that they can do, or better said, giving you more things that you can do with your Axies.
Yeah, like kind of like, there'll be different like professions within Axie Infinity and the economy. Like some people like to breed, some people, like to focus on battling, some people do both, some people are managers. And in the future, there might be other things like harvesting materials or crafting items or, whatever specialty that somebody might want to go down in the ecosystem, I feel like is kind of the
100%. Move. I mean, think of it as like, like a little Axie society. It's going to start on the digital land gameplay, but who knows, man? We might be extending to the real world before we know it.
Another great question from Nimbus. He said, will new Axie moves be introduced? And if so, how will they do that without adding new origin Axies?
How to answer this properly. So, when you say new moves, consider that we're only using 4 of the 6 parts that Axies have right now. So that is a very natural way to introduce new moves that doesn't require new Axies, right? That's like existing parts that are being underutilized right now. So that's a whole giant Pandora's box. If you mean outside of that, like not in the way mutations? You're framing that. Yeah, like not in the way you're framing that question. I think there will be ways to like level up Axie parts in the future. Use that resource to like level them up, and then maybe it's like a decision tree where you get to pick between 1 or 2 options or something. And as we create other games, like the Axie parts could do different things in different games, right? Like, Silence Whisper is notoriously bad right now, but maybe there's, a racing game where Silence Whisper gives you like a giant boost or something, right? Like in theory, anybody could write a game that uses the Axie NFT properties and attributes and assesses them with whatever power they want. Like the racing game's a great example where different parts could give you different boosts or something in the game, and they could be totally independent from the current battle system.
That makes a lot of sense. Efficient said, like, how can we at Lucid Esports United help grow the Axie Esports scene as a whole, or other managers or people that want to start an organization in the community?
Yeah, so obviously right now it's a little harder because the server is gate kept and like whitelist only. So it is slightly harder. Once we're back to the regular challenge server live on the game server, running community events is a really great way just to get people excited and turned on to esports. Like tournaments within your own scholarship, challenges versus other scholarships, like scholarship leagues where it's, we need to build storylines, right? We need to build up players, and we need to highlight players that are making really cool journeys or that are innovating like really cool card combinations. Like part of why Indez is so popular is not just because he's really good, but also because he has like a really wild story, being like a young player and being so successful and like kind of innovating these different builds, and being so predictive and like good at, like, he's kind of known for reading his opponents and being unpredictable himself as a result. That's the kind of storytelling I'm talking about. So I think that starts on sort of like a local homegrown level. And we just need to find a way to start activating more of the general, broad, sort of casual Axie audience into the esports space as viewers and becoming part of that general engagement. And I think like with the relatively recent change to the daily quest, now putting more favoritism on the esports side of things, feels like there's more of a vested interest for people to get better at the game and be more focused on the competitive side and try to figure out what the top players are doing. So that's like really broad, but on a basic level, like we just need help extending the reach and the excitement of esports. I think the broad message that we want to echo is that Sky Mavis cares a lot about Axie Esports. We've got a lot of money in the treasury and the play to earn fund that we're going to use to support esports. Hopefully this preseason shows that, we're not afraid to open up the purse a little bit and drop whatever it is, $400,000, $300,000 on this preseason of experiments. That's like the tip of the iceberg. And we've got a lot of really cool stuff in store. So this is super, super early days. The game's alpha, esports is like pre-alpha. So anything that helps spread the good word, get people excited, and start building community with inside esports, if you're doing anything on that spectrum, you're slaying it as far as I'm concerned.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's really great to hear. And like, I agree, this is so early right now. Like Axie is alpha and then the esports is pre-alpha, but the community is amazing and growing. And I also agree with the stories. I was kind of joking with my buddy last night. I was like, this really like Indez, Elijah, Bryson's commenting on it. Like who's the best at Axie right now, I think is a wonderful storyline to be running right now. And it really is a good battle to see, like, who's going to come out on top. I would love to see them meet in some more tournaments. And like, you can see the tournament scene is growing. There are players, asking to get in these tournaments. How do they get in? The sign up sheets are filling up very, very quickly. So it's definitely a fast growing community, and we're excited.
Yeah. It's a shame that we can't do like actual opens right now. I really want to, and I know there's a really big demand for it, but it's just one of those, we open up the floodgates, I know it's going to happen to the server, and then we won't have esports at all. So it's like this weird stepping stone thing, but I'm excited to be able to open up like more of the bigger opens. And, we've talked to like Community Gaming and some of these other sites about like, okay, how do we handle an open tournament with 10,000 entrants in each region? That's totally possible with some of the numbers that we're looking at. So we do have some big problems to solve, but I think they're very solvable.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time here. I know we went over a little bit, and I really want to thank you for taking the time to hang out today and discuss all of this Axie stuff with us. It's going to go up on YouTube, and I hope we can do this in the future as more news and things evolve, and hopefully we can get a little bit more involved on the esports side. We really want to bring our scholars up and everybody in our team and see a bright future for the community, and just want to be a part of it in any way we can and network with everybody else doing the same.
Totally. Like I said, I think hyping up some of these like scholarship rivalries from an esports sense could be really cool. I'd love to see some of those like team events, StarCraft style, where you've got 5 players on each side and you just play back and forth, like best of 3, losers eliminated, and you go until one side runs out of players. I think that kind of stuff is just as important as the 1v1 matchups. I see Axie kind of like tennis. We got singles and doubles. We're going to have singles and team events. We definitely want Axie Esports to involve and incentivize like traditional teams to realize some value rather than it just being a collection of singleton players. So I think
that was a little
like
alpha drop there.
Yeah, like I think those storylines get pretty hype,
And we want to do that too. We're kind of looking at it like baseball. That's such a horrible analogy because it's so like North American centered, baseball. But like looking at like Triple A and Double A and Pro League with our scholars, and we want to advance them. Like if somebody's standing out with our base scholar team that we're working with and they're at the top of their MMR level, we need to support them and get them the coaching and the Axies around them to help them level up and eventually make their way to that Pro League. And we want to have a way for our scholars to compete. We want to take like, hey, our top 10 scholars and say, hey, we've got a prize pool for you guys. You guys did the best. Let's run a mini tournament here and give away some extra incentive and earnings to everybody, because I love the way the game has gone, like shifting away from the PvE and more towards the PvP. I think it's like much more long-term sustainable. It keeps the people in
Yeah.
the ecosystem that are willing to learn and actually want to be a part of the game. So I think everything's just moving in the right direction. I kind of laugh at all the FUD. I'm just pouring more.
And again, this is like, I know it feels like people like to think of us as a AAA game or like it's totally done. Our game is like not that polished right now. And that's like, we have a lot of stuff that we're excited to deploy over the next 2 quarters that will make Axie feel so much more like a universe. And, you know, esports is not for everyone, and that's totally okay. Axie has a really wide and diverse set of demographics behind it. As far as games go, I think our gender split of male and female is much closer to, you know, representation of reality than certainly the games that I come from, like Dota and StarCraft, that are like 90-95% male in a lot of cases. So Axie needs to have a multitude of game types to accommodate for that. You know, like LAN gameplay is going to have some, you know, like Clash Royale sort of feels, or I guess Clash of Clans rather, kind of like some Stardew Valley sort of farming and building and, you know, crafting these games that don't have that same kind of sense of urgency, but still have some meaningful impact where you get to build out your space. You know, like The Sims, right? That's a really popular genre of game that doesn't necessarily resonate with us esports folks, but that'll be a really key part of just the Axie universe so that it can appeal to everyone. But yeah, esports is a really key part of that. And I think fundamentally it's about rewarding the human element. And that's what esports is, you know, players versus players, players watching players. It doesn't get more human and socially connected than esports, in my opinion.
Absolutely, man. I'm so pumped right now. This is a great way to leave it off. There was so much alpha dropped at the end of that call right there. I really appreciate it, and I hope we get to do it again in the future, man. And thank you so much for your time, Zyori. This has been an amazing podcast.
You too, man. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good one.